Hi, I'm Chelsea.
And I'm Sophie, and we are here to help guide you to the why behind your wellness why.
Come join us on our journey. Sophie, this is our first podcast we're recording in 2022.
Would you look at that?
I'm so excited.
I'm very excited too.
If you are listening, you probably have already listened to our last podcast, which is about habits. And so this month, we're really taking the time to help set you guys up for success for the new year. We're going to talk through how to set goals, how to measure goals, what is a goal, like what is, if you've heard the phrase, a SMART goal, and really just help you guys set yourself up for the most success in 2022.
And don't forget, most importantly, why you want to achieve the goal, right, Chelsea?
Yeah. So that actually leads right into step number one in setting a goal. And when you're picking your goal is assessing your lifestyle. And that goes along with the why. So talk a little bit about that, Sophie. Like when someone is about to set a goal or picking a goal, why should they assess it with their lifestyle? What does that mean? And why is it important?
So, very good question. And I mean, because you want it to be realistic, you want it to fit into your lifestyle. You don't want something that is unachievable. You don't want to set yourself up for failure. You rather set yourself up for success and achieving that goal, because we want to see you all succeed, right? We don't want you guys beating yourselves up.
Mm-hmm. So what's an example of that? Because I know that's even something that I've struggled with. It's like, and I think a lot of people struggle with that this time of year because you go into a new year, you have all these big expectations, and you're like, this is the year that I'm going to do this, right? We've all been there. I'll never forget. I think it was 2022, which now I just laugh at it thinking back to. And I was like, this is going to be my year. You know, you always hear that, right? Like, this is going to be the year of me. And it's like, what does that even mean? So give an example of how a goal might not fit with someone's lifestyle and how then you could fit it with your lifestyle.
So, as we were just talking right before this, which we'll get to, is like SMART goals, is someone being like, I'm going to work out 5 days a week. And they're like so excited, which is great. We want you guys to be excited and we want you to be ambitious, right? But if you were working out one time a week or not at all, adding 4 more days to that, 5 more days to that, making it 5 times a week is asking yourself a lot. And that's where, again, as Chelsea said, you need to assess like your lifestyle and see what you can add in. Just like we were talking about the habits. Remember, we want to think about adding, not necessarily subtracting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're not saying that you can't accomplish a lot with the goal, but you just don't want to go from 0 to 100,
Yes.
and that goes along with setting a SMART goal, which we'll get into in a little bit. But yes, if you want to work up to working out 5 days a week, that's great. That can definitely be a goal. But there's also a difference between like big goals and smaller goals within that goal. And that kind of goes along with the SMART goals, which we'll get to. But before we talk a little bit about that and how to set a SMART goal, there are some questions that we have written down that we'll talk just a little bit about that might help you get started with assessing your lifestyle, with really diving into even setting a goal for yourself. So the first one is, what do I want and what will it take me to get there? So I think that's a great example of what Sophie was just explaining in terms of, what do I want? I would even add in there maybe like, why do I want it? Which is a whole nother question, but that's also a good time of asking yourself that. So like, why do I want to achieve this goal? And what will it take me to get there? What are your thoughts on this type of question? How do you think that would be helpful, Sophie?
I mean, it's helpful to one, figure out what you want because you can't, I mean, like, this is why we want you to figure out the why behind your goal. You can't just come up with something and not really necessarily have a why or never create a why, because then it's more likely that goal is just going to kind of fall through.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then you obviously need to break down what you want with what will it take to get me there, and make those micro goals within that big macro goal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So using the example that you gave of working out one day a week or maybe not at all to then the goal of being at 5 days a week, that's a really good example of, okay, what do I want? The goal might be, I want to work out 5 days a week. Why do I want to achieve this goal? There could be a million reasons for that. So I'm not necessarily going to answer that one. But then the question of like, what will it take me to get there? Is that's where that might be breaking it down of, okay, my
Yes.
end goal is working out 5 days a week, but again, it might not be realistic to do that this week. So what will it take for me to get there to build up to that? Which I think is really leads into the next question is, when it is the right time to start, when will I know I'm there? And that's a really tricky question. And you might not necessarily know the answer to it, but it's always a, a good thing to question that, because again, I think right now is a great example of everyone thinks they have to start now, like January 1, I need to start this new goal of whatever that goal might be. And it might not be the right time to start. And I think it's a good time to ask yourself, why? Why is it a good time to start and why is it not? And when will I know it is a good time to start?
Yeah, I have something to add to that. So I got this a lot more. I mean, like, a lot more. I don't really get it now in working in a commercial gym, of getting new member joins, like new member sessions, and so many people being like, no, I need to work out so I can work out with you. Like, I can't like work out with you yet. And I'm like, I'm here to help you work out. Like, what do you mean you need to get in shape to see me? I am here to help you get in shape. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that was always kind of like a tough question with the when is it the right time to start?
And personally, for me, which again, I think this is probably going to be controversial to say this out loud, but I would even counteract that question. Is there ever a right time to start? I mean, from my standpoint, like, we're saying this question for a reason. So we wouldn't be telling you guys to ask yourself, when is it the right time to start? And when will I know I'm there? We're not telling you that to then go back and be like, well, that question is pointless. But I think it's a validation of, there might not ever be the perfect time to start, but I think it's going back to assessing your lifestyle. So I'll just take another example. So if my goal is to run an event, a half marathon, a marathon, or whatever, but I just had a surgery, it might not be the right time to start that training. So I think that's a good example of like, it might not be the right time to start, but I think counteracting that is what Sophie just said, is not using the, is this the right time to start, as an excuse. So I think that question can be looked at positively or negatively depending on how you look at it, because nutrition's the same way, right? It's like, I have a lot of individuals come to me saying like, I want to improve on XYZ, but I'm too busy, or it just doesn't fit with my work schedule, or I'm traveling a lot, so I will start when I come back. And I will never forget, a couple of years ago, I worked with an individual who every single time they saw me, they always had a but. So like an excuse of, I want to do this, but something, something, something. And of course, I was there to help them through that. But I will never forget the day that that individual walked into my office and sat down and they said, I've realized I'm always going to have a butt. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, because it was just like right out of, it was like out of nowhere. And they said, I've realized every single time I come in here, I always have an excuse. Like I always have, I want to do this, but it's the holidays, or I want to do this, but I'm traveling. And they realized life always has its butts. It always has something getting in the way. Don't let life stop you from making goals, because there's always going to be a but. There's always going to be an excuse. Something's always going to be in the way.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I couldn't love it more. Because it couldn't be more true.
Yeah. And we can all relate to it. I mean, again, I know Sophie and I work in the wellness profession, but we could probably both go on list of our butts, things that have gotten in the way of challenges of reaching our goals. So I think, again, it's like looking at it positively in a way of like, okay, the butts are always going to be there, but how are we going to get around them?
Yeah.
So
like, what are you going to do about it?
Yes. So I think that's more of the question when we're talking about like, when is it the right time to start? It's assessing those like buts, excuses, whys, all that type of stuff. And, the time is now, as Sophie is lipping in the background.
Yes, the time is now.
So some other questions that might help are, we already talked about like, why do I want to achieve this goal? Where does this goal fit in? So we talked about this on another podcast, but assessing, is your goal, we talked about it more of like your why, but we can talk about it with goals too, is this goal for you, or is it for someone else? Or where does it fit into your lifestyle? Where is it going to fit into your daily routine? And then the last big one is who will I become, and who will support me? So I think this is a big one in helping you assess if your goal is truly important to you and how will it make your life better. So that's a conversation I have with clients who want to lose weight. A lot of people have goals to lose weight right now around this time of year. And I am not sitting here saying you should lose weight or you should not lose weight, but it's questioning yourself of, if I lose weight, will it make me a better person, and why? It's just good to ask yourself that, because again, I think a lot of people think they need to achieve a specific goal because of what they see on social media or comparison to themselves. But at the end of the day, the question is, how will it improve your life? This goal that you have set for yourself, why is it important to you, and how will it improve your life?
Totally. I love that. I posted forever ago on Instagram, like one of my clients once was like, what's the best transformation you've ever seen? And like, I know she was talking about weight loss. Like it couldn't have been more implied. And like, that was one of her goals, which every goal is as equally as important as the next. I've told her, I was like, I've seen so many transformations, like weight loss, gym confidence, like lifestyle changes, and personally, my favorite is lifestyle changes, but the outcome of lifestyle changes can be all of those things, right? It can be weight loss. It can be your clothes changing how they fit. It can be so many things.
Yeah. And a lot of times when you talk to an individual, and again, we're talking about weight loss because it's just something common I think a lot of people are looking for right now. And again, to Sophie's point, we're not saying you should have that goal or should not have that goal, but if it is your goal, it's really questioning, is that what I want to achieve, or is there an underlying goal underneath that? So if someone says, I want to lose weight, it's questioning like, why do you want to lose weight? Is it to look in the mirror and feel good, which that might be one reason, but is it more of, to Sophie's point, to feel more confident, to have more energy? There's a whole list of things that maybe your goal isn't actually to lose weight. Maybe it's about improving something else that you think will be achieved with weight loss.
And I have to say, when people come in with this number, because I'm going to generalize women, and a lot of them will have this number of like the weight they were in college or just post college, and they want to get back down to that. And I'm always like, you can lose weight, but you might not lose as much as you want or think you want to, because your body changes when you lift weights. Like, it's not necessarily as much of a numbers game as you think with the weight loss, because like your body can change form like so much. Like one of my clients, this is an example, she's a little bit older. She's been working with me for almost a year now. And it was a few months ago. She was like, the scale hasn't changed like at all. And she told me from the get-go, she didn't really want to change her diet. And I was like, okay, we'll see what we can do. But she put on a pair of jeans she hasn't been able to fit into for 2 years. And I was like, would you look at that? Like, that's amazing. The scale hasn't changed, but your like jeans fit. Like, how great is that? And she was so happy.
Yes. I think that all goes back to assessing your lifestyle. It's all a full circle, right?
I totally agree.
I think we can all relate to comparing ourselves to our previous self. And to your point, Sophie, if you have the goal of, I want to be the way I was in college, or I want to have my pre-baby body back, is to take a step back and assess your lifestyle then and assess your lifestyle now. And that's such an important step in goal setting.
Mm-hmm.
Is your goal now realistic to where you are in life and who you are in life? Because these types of goals can be really tricky goals to set for yourself, because you probably are a different person, right? I hope you aren't the same person you were in college. And I bet you're not the same person you were prior to becoming a new mom or a new dad. And we all grow and we change, and it's in a positive way. So, why are we trying to be a previous version of ourselves? It just blows my mind that we compare each other to ourselves so much. And we all do it. I'm guilty of it too, unfortunately, but it's just a conversation that we need to talk about more and be open about, because
Yes.
why are we trying to be previous versions of ourselves? It's just
Girl,
wild to me.
I don't know. I'm not. But I love that. Like, very well said, Chelsea.
Sophie, since I went on a tangent for a while, can you talk a little bit about SMART goals and what a SMART goal is?
Yes. So, SMART goals. So, S stands for specific, which, as we had mentioned, like narrow it down, figure out that why. And then measurable is how you want to track it, which again, Chelsea and I have kind of discussed. There's numbers you can follow, like body fat percentage, weight on the scale, but there's also like energy levels, gym, food confidence, how clothes fit, body awareness, sleep, mood, sex drive, monthly cycles, food cravings, and then achievable, making sure it's like challenging enough, but within reach. And then realistic, capable of hitting that goal, and then time bound, right? Which time bound goes back to making or acknowledging your macro goal, that big picture goal, and then having micro goals, which could be, I would say, monthly, right, Chelsea? I feel like monthly check-in with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, to be super easy, like one should only lose like 1 to 2 pounds a week. That's like a healthy timeline for that. And that would be, say, 8 pounds a month. So like, just to break it down, it makes it super simple. And with that, if it's not a numbers goal and the previous example of like going to the gym 5 days a week, but you're only going like none or once, say for a month, you're going to lock in twice a week. And then the next month, 3 times a week, like just baby steps.
Yeah. And so breaking it down, so those were all really good examples. So SMART is an abbreviation. So again, each of those letters mean a different term. So S is specific, M is measurable, A is achievable, attainable is another one you might hear. The R is realistic, and the T is time bound or timely. You had talked about the measurable piece, and I think this is one we should hone in for just for a minute, because I think this is probably the one that people get most caught up with, is thinking that measuring a goal has to be numbers related. And it absolutely can be. This goes back to our conversation in the podcast where we talked about data and all of that type of stuff. And so if you do have numbers, totally fine. You might be someone who is data driven, but it doesn't have to be numbers either. So I know you had mentioned, like, a good example we'll just talk about real quick is mood. So someone might be like, okay, I want to lose weight to improve my mood. Well, how are we going to measure that? So yes, of course, you can maybe one day say I'm in a better mood than another day, but a good example of how you could specifically measure that is through journaling. So that might be a really good way of, okay, maybe every night before you go to bed, take 5 minutes, write a recap of your day. And then after a month, just like Sophie said, reassessing and checking in with yourself on a monthly basis, read back through your journal entries and see how you have improved throughout the month in terms of your mood. So that's a really good way of, like, you can still measure something that is not numbers related. It might not have a graph that it's like, okay, I see XYZ, but it's still a good way of seeing progress of how you're working towards a goal.
Yeah, that's great. I also want to mention something of like, we don't want you guys fixating on these things. That's also why if you are a data person, like, that's great, but we want to give you other options as well. And then I also want to say goals are amazing and great, and I hope everyone has some, but always, always, always process over outcome, right? We want you to really enjoy your journey, and you wouldn't be able to have the goal without it, right? That's like the fun part. And after achieving something, I had this goal for years of deadlifting twice my body weight. When I did it, I couldn't have been more excited and happy, but like all the other lists leading up to it were like the funnest part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that goes back to our conversation of habits, right? Is like, you might have this end goal in mind, but it's also asking yourself, what are the habits that you are going to create along the way? Because you might accomplish a goal, but if it's not able to be continued after the goal is achieved, is it still important to you? And the answer to that might be yes, but that's just like a really good question to ask yourself. So again, like, if there's an event, like, again, if you want to compete in something, it's like, okay, the goal might be to accomplish this event. So that's a good example of like, okay, the event might end and that goal might be accomplished, but it's also like, well, what habit was created during that? And is that something you want to continue? So just a good question to ask yourself. So
I love that. And consistency is key with that, right? And with these SMART goals, you need to keep putting money in the bank, right? In that savings account. We would always talk about that in college cross country, like base miles, like just putting those miles in the bank to use them later on race day, things like that.
Yeah. And I know we talked about this during our group program last year that we ran, but we talked so much about how you want to ensure that you are constantly improving, but it is not realistic to be constantly perfect. So I always say progression, not perfection.
Love it.
So to wrap this up, we're going to give you a little food for thought and a goal for goal setting of breaking down your New Year's resolution, if you set one, or even if you're not calling it a New Year's resolution, any goal that you maybe wanted to achieve in the new year, where we want you to break it down. And Sophie, tell everyone what exactly we want to do when they are breaking down that goal.
So as we mentioned at the very beginning, we want you to see like how does it fit into your life, your lifestyle, assess that. Ask yourself if it is a SMART goal, like specific, timely, all of those things. And if not, how can you make it one? And that is that.
Thanks for joining in.
Thanks, guys and gals.
Bye.
Bye.